This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Over 100 leading European academics have signed a petition condemning what they call Israel's systemic annihilation, unquote, of the educational system in the Gaza Strip. The petition, which was led by the group Euromed Human Rights Monitor, condemns Israel's targeting of academics, educational institutions, and cultural heritage sites in Gaza. As The Intercept recently reported, within the first 100 days of its war on Gaza, the Israeli military systematically destroyed every single university in the Gaza Strip. Nearly 100 university deans and professors and 3 university presidents in Gaza have been killed in the Israeli assault. Meanwhile, over 4,300 students and more than 230 teachers, professors, and administrators have been killed. Meanwhile, Hebrew University in Jerusalem is coming under criticism for suspending an internationally renowned Palestinian professor for saying Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian is a world-renowned feminist scholar whose extensive work has focused on the impacts of militarization, surveillance, and violence on the lives of Palestinian women and children. She made the remarks in an interview on Israel's Channel 12 on Monday, where she also said it was time to, quote, abolish Zionism. The next day, the university issued a statement saying, quote, as a proud Israeli public and Zionist institution, the Hebrew University strongly condemns Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian's recent shocking and outrageous statements. To ensure a safe and conducive environment for our students on campus, the university has decided to suspend Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian from teaching activities effective immediately, they wrote. Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian had been under pressure to resign from the university since late October, when she joined over 1,000 academics around the world in signing a petition calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Following her signature, the leadership of Hebrew University sent her a formal letter denouncing her and pressuring her to resign. Yesterday, Palestinian students on the Hebrew University campus demonstrated against Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian's suspension on campus and chanted the Palestinian national song Mawtini in protest. Well, Professor Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian joins us now on the program, academic, feminist, author, and activist based in Jerusalem. Up until her suspension, she was chair at the Faculty of Law, Institute of Criminology, and the School of Social Work and Public Welfare at Hebrew University. She's also the chair in global law at Queen Mary University of London. She's the author of several books, including Security, Theology, Surveillance, and the Politics of Fear, as well as Militarization and Violence Against Women in Conflict Zones in the Middle East, the Palestinian Case Study. Today, she's joining us from London, where she just flew to. Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian, welcome to Democracy Now! Can explain your decision to leave and what exactly happened?
Yes, hi, Amy. Thank you for having me at Democracy Now! Actually, I'm not the chair of the Faculty of Law. I'm a member of the faculty, and I'm a researcher that studies state crime and genocide and victims of abuse of power. The decision was made by the university to suspend me after a podcast that happened that asked me about my field of expertise. Let me remind you, I'm a scholar that studies state crime. I'm a scholar that studies genocide. I'm a scholar that really looks at the mundane, at the effect of what goes on, and that studies anti-racism from a feminist perspective. So what happened is that the letter was publicized before I read it, and nobody have contacted me. And this is not the first time that the Hebrew University publicized it. They did it in October when I said that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide. Of course, 2 months afterward, the ICJ is looking at it, and they even issued provisional measures against the state of Israel. But I also need to remind us all that the academic space is a space that's supposed to be a space whereby we share our ideas, the multiplicity of ideas. And then the Hebrew University is sending me a letter telling me that this academic institution, which is the Hebrew University, is a Zionist institution, which means if my narrative is an anti-Zionist and my narrative is a clearly anti-Zionist, I am calling for abolishing Zionism because I see it as very violent towards the people and as causing criminalities, and therefore I look at state criminality. And the fact that a university is not only sending me a letter, it's the dean of the School of Social Work actually called my students and he told them in a very forceful manner that I'm out, that I have no place at the Hebrew University, which was my academic institution for the past 30 years. This is a place where I taught, where I did the research. The question remains whether what is teachable, what should be written, what is publishable, what we can speak as scholars that are studying state criminality as opposing to what is going on, as opposing to what the state is doing is not accepted, so they throw us out of the university. And this is the same policy that the state of Israel is doing outside. So it's silencing, it's preventing people from speaking, it's threatening, it's punishing, and it's also done in a very degraded and indignifying manner, calling my student a day before the end of the first semester and telling me you're suspended is something that is beyond any expectations. But this is, and stressing it's a Zionist institution, you can't abide by these rules, you're out. My only concern, Amy, today is the safety of students, the safety of my students, Jewish and Palestinian, that are standing against genocide, standing against the war, refusing to see the continuous and ongoing atrocities. My really concern is the silencing of dissent all over the world, because we see it in academic institutions. The question, if we think that academic institutions should work according and by the orders from the state, I don't know why we're having academic institutions. Academia and research requires that we're attentive to details, to what goes on, to the life of women, men, children. And I'm really concerned today. And of course, I must clearly state that the behavior of the university is a behavior that is threatening the safety of our students, the safety of colleagues that are speaking against the genocide, and my own personal safety as a person who lives in Jerusalem, and the safety of my family.
Professor, can you tell us what you mean by your call for abolishing Zionism?
Yes. Well, I see that the Zionist entity started by displacing people, by causing major harms, by massacres that were documented by historians, by sociologists, by political scientists, and international relations. I see Zionism that have used the law and ruled by law and not the rule of law. I've seen the Zionists causing major harm since 1948, since the Palestinian Nakba, in relation to what goes on. And it's not only my position, the position of many scholars that see Zionism as a very racialized and racist ideology that is about the life and livability of one group and the exclusion and the marginalization and death of the other group. I think we can definitely live together without the Zionist ideology if we can talk more in terms and in concepts of justice, of equality, of fairness, of multiplicity of ideas, and not using one ideology to claim that we are here and the rest should be excluded. And I think, Amy, you see it today clearly in Gaza. What is going on today in Gaza when babies are dying decomposed in incubators, and I write about unchilding, I write about the attacks on children, I write about the attacks on communities. What we see in Gaza, turning it into a collective grave, is really very telling. It's really the culmination of a very, very, very violent ideology. So I guess it's time to reconsider the Zionist ideology, because it started since the early 90s with violence, with dispossession, and with lots of massacres, and to call for a discussion that is away from that very racist and very unfair and, an inhumane ideology.
Professor Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, can you talk about the concept you put forward of unchilding?
Yes. Working for years with children, watching them interacting in a space that is so militarized, like East Jerusalem. I reside in East Jerusalem. I raised my 3 beautiful daughters in Jerusalem, and the effect of the system looks at Palestinian children as others, but looking at children as unchilded. And I see it today. Only 2 days ago, Rami, a 12-year-old from Mukhayyam Shafat, was shot and killed without even a reason. He was playing It's Ramadan. So what I explain in my book on unchilding is that, number one, our children are political capital in the hands of the state. The state looks at them and clearly define them as non-children. They can be killed, they can be incarcerated, you can prevent them from studying. And you see, again, the culmination of unchilding, you see it today in Gaza. But look at occupied East Jerusalem. Occupied East Jerusalem, the number of children that were arrested, that were incarcerated, the number of children in the West Bank, in Hebron, and so on. So childhood in Palestine requires a different critical lens. Childhood in Palestine, as in other settler colonial context, and I need to remind the viewers that this is a settler colonial entity. There's a structure, and it's not an event here and an event there. It's built about the indigenization of the settler and the eviction of the native, and it's embedded in a logic of elimination. So the elimination of our kids in various modes, whether by incarcerating them, and you see the necrocarceral machinery against them in every place, or by controlling their way of living, of moving, or controlling. And these are topics that I have discussed, I have covered for over 30 years as a professor at the Hebrew University, at both the Faculty of Law and School of Social Work. And my question always, and especially now when they took this decision, is how can a scholar of state crime, a scholar that is studying victims of abuse of power, that is talking to them, listening to the voices of the kids, listening to the voices of fathers that are trying to safeguard parents that are also being unparented, how can a scholar like me, who's doing and researching, sit and be silent in times of genocide? How can you silence the voices of dissent all over the world? And I think that as an academic institution, they really need to rethink their steps. And until now, Amy, nobody have talked to me, not the president, not the rector. All they do is they send letter, and the letters are sent to the media, and then I learn about it. And I must tell you that, this time sending the letter to the media, and all of a sudden everybody is talking about me, my photo, my pictures, is very scary in an area that is heavily militarized. And maybe I should stress one thing that is important. The Hebrew University is highly militarized. Our students, Jewish students, are walking around with rifles, with guns, and Palestinian students are extremely worried and fearful. And as a Palestinian professor, I talk about those things. I study. I'm running a major study funded by the Israeli Science Foundation on the issue of the effect of enrolling in a university that speaks and thinks in a specific way. But I thought that they will be open to multiplicity of ideas, since I was writing about those issues for a year. And this is me, this is my career, this is my analysis for a year. But let me again stress that I'm really worried today, because yesterday one of the students that participated in the demonstration was arrested. I'm very worried. They were taking pictures of the different students that were there. And mind you, they were professors, they were Jewish and Palestinian professors, they were Jewish and Palestinian students demonstrating against the decision. and framing them and shaming them and attacking them the way they're doing to me and trying to punish is something that should not be done in an academic institution.
And how do you answer the charge from Prime Minister Netanyahu on down that to be anti-Zionist is to be anti-Semitic, Professor Shalhoub-Kevorkian?
Well, anti-Zionism is totally not anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is to refuse to accept violence, and this is not anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is to refuse to accept continuous dispossession, is to refuse to accept this ideology of supremacy, is to refuse to accept the securitized ideas of one group against the other. The opposite, totally opposite. Actually, to think through the lens of anti-Semitism is to remember never to frame any group or anybody as ontologically below human. And that's exactly what Netanyahu, what Zionism is doing to the Palestinian. It's actually anti-Palestinianism and anti-Semitism are very close. I guess that I think that we need to always remember that abuses of power is anti-Semitism, that is framing one group as non-human is anti-Semitism, and this is what Zionism is doing to us.
We've been talking with the renowned Palestinian academic, Professor Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, who is a feminist, author, and activist, usually based in Jerusalem, recently suspended by Hebrew University after teaching there for decades. She's the author of a number of books, including Security Theology, Surveillance and the Politics of Fear, and Militarization and Violence Against Women in Conflict Zones in the Middle East, the Palestinian Case Study.